Hi, Movie Explainer here. Let's start the video. The movie name, I Am What I Am. The movie opens up with Kyun riding his bike across the street. The Yoon is a timid young boy known around the city as a nuisance and looked down on because he lived with his grandfather. His parents had traveled to another town to make a living and had not returned after so many years. He arrives at the market and distributes flyers to passers-by, but soon he gets distracted by the New Year celebration show being displayed. He crawls on the floor to make his way to the front of the crowd. The Yoon was so excited as he danced around with a watermelon on his head, then he accidentally hits Chad, the leader of a gang called the Lions. Pissed off by Jaeyoon, they bully him into giving them his red pocket. He hands it over to them and got kicked on his ass to the floor. Suddenly someone wearing a red lion head costume swiftly moved past them and takes the red pocket from the village's black lions. Then she climbs up to the bamboo sticks, challenging the village to a lettuce-picking battle. The lions boldly accepted the challenge and climbs onto the bamboo sticks as well. They race for the top, and then the red lion wins. She returns Jaeyoon's red pocket to him. Then the black lions angrily chased after her. The Yoon points in a direction and signals to her to follow him. He rides with her on his bike through the village market until they arrived at a hilltop far from the reach of the black lions. They drop off the bike and walk to the very top of the hill. The mysterious girl takes off her lion head disguise to look around. She teases Jaeyoon for bringing her to the top of the hill, where she can easily be spotted by those chasing after her. Innocent Jaeyoon offers to take her somewhere else, but she declined. They sat down to rest, and then she asked Jaeyoon for his name. After hearing his name, she asked him to spell it as it sounded like her name, and when he did, she was shocked to find out the spelling was the same as hers. She teases him for having a girl's name. Then he explains to her his parents had given the name to him, hoping it will bring him luck. After laughing, she gives him the red lion head and asked him to put it on. He tells her he didn't know how to do the lion dance, so he hesitated before putting it on. He closed his eyes following her instructions and listened quietly to his heartbeat. She shoves a flyer to his face and asked him to unleash the lion within him. He struggles to grab the flyer. Then he takes off the lion's head. He reads the flyer and realized it was for a competition in which she is the champion. He asked her if she thinks he could do it, and she encouraged him to, after which she bid him goodbye. At night, fireworks went up in the sky while Jaeyoon had dinner with his grandfather, who asked him to reach out to his parents after the dinner. Gyun went to a shop outside and made use of their telephone. His parents were in a town called Guangzhou. They didn't want to tell him how hard they were struggling over there, so they made him believe they were doing fine so he wouldn't worry. The UN assured them that he will be the one fending for them soon. As he was now 18 years old, he went to a statue of Buddha inside a forest and made a wish to go and meet his parents in Guangzhou. He also made up his mind to sign up for the Lions Games. The next morning, Kyun tells his friend Kat about his plans to learn the lion dance and asked him to join him, but Kat laughs at the idea. Instead, Jaeyoon tells him how serious he was about it, and then Kat informs him the lion costume was too expensive for them to purchase. Jaeyoon brings out the costume, then Kat shrinks in shock. He tries convincing the Yoon into them selling it and asked him where he had stolen it from. John tells him it was given to him as a gift from a girl. Kat was a young boy who loves ladies, and hearing Jaeyoon talk about a girl stroke his interest, he asked Yoon to tell him about her. After hearing him say she was pretty, so Jaeyoon gave him the flyer and showed her to him. He agreed to join after Jaeyoon confirmed they will be meeting pretty girls like her if they joined, but then John expressed their need for a drummer. Kat instructed him to follow him, and then he takes him to a friend of theirs called Doggy. Just like the other two young boys who lacked in their ways, Doggy was a foodie, and with his parents' income being too little to provide for him, he had to work to feed himself. Doggy tells the boys to leave him alone after they asked him to join them. A few seconds later, the boss came out. He noticed some of the food was missing, and finding out Doggy was the one eating them, he fired him on the spot. The boys left the store to discuss at one of their meeting spots. Doggy asked if lunch was going to be provided. Jaeyoon shows him the flyer where it was written that feeding and housing will be catered for, and Doggy immediately agreed. Then again, they had another challenge that they needed to pass through, which was finding a drum. The kids went through the market announcing their plans of joining the competition and promised to see the business name of whoever provided them with a drum on their uniform, thereby giving it free advertisements on TV as they made the announcement. A flying egg hits Doggy on his face and the boys fall to the floor. Chad and his lion team walked up to them. He took the lion head from Jaeyoon, then questions his friends if they were the ones who humiliated him during the lettuce picking competition. After confirming they weren't the ones, he took out his anger on the lion head, smashing it. Then he mocks Jaeyoon for having poor Parents and not being able to afford a new lion head, teardrops fell to the floor from Jayun's eyes. He tried holding back his anger, but when he couldn't, he attacked Chad. However, Chad and his team beat him and his friends to a pulp. They hid to the rooftop of a building where they expressed their pain to each other. They decided to head home, leaving the lion's head behind. As Guyun went down the building, he heard a noise and hurried back up while the rest followed behind him. They watched S group practice lion dancing in the next compound, which made them sad and envious, and they started crying. Again, they all remembered how people insulted and looked down on them and became determined to become great lion dancers. The next morning, they knelt in front of a temple in hopes of being accepted and trained by a master. Days went by, but they remained there even under the rain and sun until an elderly man met with them. They explained to the old man what they wanted, so he gave them a map that will lead them to someone who will train them to become lion dancers. The boys excitedly took the map and set out in search of their master. After several failed attempts on meeting dead end, they decided to take the old man with him. He led them to a fish shop that was within their neighborhood. He told them a great lion dancer resided in the shop. The kids doubted that the one they searched for resided in such a place. They saw a middle-aged man walk out from the shop with a smoke in his hand and gulping down a cup of dry gin. They decided to leave. When they heard music, they turned their backs and were surprised as they watched the man dance. His moves left them in amazement, and as they were engrossed in his dance steps, his wife came out and stopped the music. Then she nagged him to go on delivery and quit his dream of lion dancing, and the kids followed him behind. When they arrived at the shop, they offered to help him out. Then they told him about their intention. He declined their request and gave them money to get popsicles instead, as the weather was hot. As a reward for their help, the boys stood wondering what next to do. Then Doggy suggested they go get the popsicles. They squatted on the floor right in front of the store with popsicles in their hands. They remained there all through the night. The next morning followed his delivery. They continued doing so until he finally agreed to train them. Cat decided to call him Sifu, and the rest joined in calling him that as well. He took them to a group who were training. Then he made them see the areas they were lacking, and they trained secretly without his wife's knowledge, as she was strongly against it. One night, as they gathered to eat, Cat accidentally blurts out about the competition and asked Sifu to be there. Mentor, he acted like he had no idea what Cat was talking about. His wife left the table and went inside. They all attacked Cat for spilling the beans, but soon after his wife returned with Sifu's old uniform. He was so glad he hugged his wife. Then he sobbed. The kids asked her why he stopped lion dancing since he was good at it. Then she told them it was because lion dancing couldn't provide for their needs. The next morning, while Sifu and his wife cleaned the store, Sifu's wife told him to get the kids a good lion dancing costume and a drum. She agreed to take the boys in and treat them like her own children since they do not have kids. Sifu met with the kids and they asked him what they were going to do for training. He doesn't answer, but asked them to hop on a bike. Instead, the bike fell apart before they arrived at the store. The kids were delighted to see many amazing lion dance costumes and drums. They watched Sifu and excitement and listened to him as he told them about the costume. Then they picked out their costumes. Following his order, Sifu set the kids up with another team for a friendly match just for them to test their skills. The only rule of the game was to be the first to reach the lettuce hanging on a rope. The battle went on fairly at the initial stage, but then the other team resorted to violence since there was no rule against it, and they won. Sifu talked with the boys after the match, telling them about their strength and their weaknesses. The next day they returned to training, but this time they trained on actual bamboo sticks. Sifu also put the boys through physical training and weightlifting. After several pieces of training, the boys gradually got better and stronger. The night before the qualifiers competition, Sifu took the boys to the field for them to take a look at it. The Yun saw a stick taller than the rest and asked Sifu why it was there. Sifu explained to him that it was to keep the lion dancers humble and remind them that there are some mountains they can't overcome. Cat asked Sifu if he was able to jump it during his days, but Sifu said no and told the boys not to attempt it. The next day at the competition, the boys stood anxiously as they wait for Sifu to arrive. Doggy informs them Sifu had gone to get something from a store. As Cat expressed how anxious he was performing without Sifu being around, the organizers announced that each team was to pick out a tag and will compete with any team who picks the same number as them. On his way back, Sifu met his wife talking with a man who had wanted to marry her in the past. He felt bad after hearing the man tell his wife she was suffering and should leave him since he had decided to chase a wild dream. He went back to the shop to help out with the deliveries and give online dancing. However, his wife forced him out of the scooter and instructed him to go back to the competition as the boys needed him. She told him to make sure he wins and that she will handle the deliveries. The Boys were to compete against the team whom Sifu had set them up with for a friendly match. Doggy and Cat were afraid to compete as they couldn't see Sifu anywhere, but Jiun encouraged them to fight and not ruin Sifu's reputation. Late in the evening, Sifu arrived at the competition site. Running, he panted heavily with his cloth drenched in sweat. The competition was already over. Everyone except the boys had already left. He looked at their faces and realized they had lost, so he consoled them as he did so. The boys surprised him with a ticket showing they had qualified. They all returned to Sifu's place. His wife prepared a feast to celebrate their victory. As they ate, Cat teases Jiun that his dream of performing at Guangzhou will become a reality. A young man ran to them and informed Juna's grandfather was searching for him because his parents had arrived. Jiun excused himself from the tab and ran back home excitedly. As he ran home, he stopped in front of the Buddha and made a bow after saying thank you. As he arrived home, Jiun found his father laying on the bed. His countenance changed, and he became filled with sadness. His mother explained to him that his father had fallen off a building while working and was in a coma. Then she began weeping. His grandfather then told him the doctor had asked him to take him back home and pray for a miracle to happen. Gilyun's heart broke as he watched his father lay helpless on the bed. Then he clenched his fist. As he turned around, he saw Sifu and his friend standing outside. They had come to give him his costume. He ran off crying. Cat wanted to run after him, but Sifu held him back and asked him to let Gilyun be on his own. Gilyun went to the Buddha statue and he sat on the floor weeping and asking questions. The next morning, Kyun bid his family and friends goodbye. He moved to Guangzhou to make money to treat his father and provide for the family's needs. Sifu and his friends followed him to the bus and stayed with him until the bus was out of their sight. The Yun worked at the factory and also did other menial jobs. After arriving in Guangzhou, he communicated with his friends back home once in a while. As time went by, his communication became less and they started worrying if he will ever return home again. Jiun receives information from one of his co-workers about a bigger contract with bigger pay in another city named Shanghai. Jiun called his mother to inform her about it. Then she lets him know his friends came around and dropped some money while going to deliver a parcel. Kyun bumps into his namesake Jiun, the girl who had given him the lion head. She drops him off at his location and encourages him not to give up. The announcement for the lion's head competition was made and Sifu decided to dance with the boys to replace Jiun. He wanted to perform because the entire competition will be aired on TV and he wanted Yun to see them and remember not to give up on a rainy day. Gyun made a delivery to S team of lion dancers. They scolded him for being late and called him a loser because he had spilled some of the soup that night. As Jiun lay on the floor under the bed to sleep, he sighted the lion's head. He crawled out and picked up the head. Then he quietly walked out of the room. He went to the rooftop. Then he danced with the lion's head. His dance moves were sorrowful and it was obvious he wasn't happy. As he danced, he bumped into some woods and they fall to the floor making noises. He tries to avoid bumping into any other thing. As he did that, his energy rushed and his dance moves became even better than before. Dion danced with his entire energy. Then he stopped when he felt his bright light shining on his face. He took off the lion's head and walked towards the sun. He dropped his lion head and outstretched his arms. As he listened to his heartbeat sounding like the drum of the lion dance, he left the lion's head behind and decided to face his reality. He set off for Shanghai with his friend. In the morning, as they walked to the train station, his friend noticed he wasn't with his lion head, so he asked about it and Jiun told him he had left it behind. As they continued walking, his friend heard drum beats coming from the lion dance competition. He was excited to check it out. However, Jiun was worried they might miss their train, but after being persuaded, he decided to check out the lion dance competition with him. Sifu and the boys had also arrived for the competition. Yun sighted them from where he stood during the first round of the competition. Sifu made a good impression on the judges. He drew their attention to the team. His wife was watching them from home and was proud of him, and the team other teams also became weary of them, considering them a big threat. After successfully passing the first round, the qualified teams moved on to the second round. Every team was to send in 2 lions, but Sifu and the boys had just one, which put them at a disadvantage. They struggled to qualify as most teams decided to join together just to defeat them. When they realized it was getting too difficult, Sifu revealed his secret move, which was his feet. Years of selling salted fish made him develop smelly feet. Sifu took off his shoes, and the smell from his feet forced most of the other groups to fail. Soon after, Sifu's feet stopped smelling, as some groups had brought air freshener. This made it difficult for them to continue. Again, the Yun stood where he was, and he watched them struggle. He tried to ignore them and not intervene, but he couldn't. hauled himself back and was left with no choice other than to join the team. He left his bag behind and went back to fetch the lion's head. He came back with a lion head was it changed into his costume. He swapped positions with Sifu and together with Cat he took the team to the next round. After they qualified, the crowd cheered them on. Chad and his team had also qualified, and surprisingly he congratulated Jiyeon. He spots Jiyun in the crowd waving at him. Feeling happy to see her, he waved back to her and wanted to show her the cotton tree petal he had with him. He noticed she was with another boy and he sadly kept his back in his pocket. He met with Sifu and offered him a cup of coffee. Sifu commended him on his new level of strength. Then he met with Doggy and Cat and they all embraced each other. It was time for the semifinals, and the 4 teams who was qualified were to duel against each other. Chad's team lost to their opponent while Jiyeon's team won against theirs. Chad encouraged Guiyun and his friends to win the finals and bring glory to the village. Just before the match, Sifu advised the boys to remain focused. The lion dance competition was organized to revive some dead Chinese traditions, and it was going smoothly. The last game was also conducted with another tradition called the long bench array. The game started and both teams competed to win. The competition was tough and it ended in a tie. To determine the winner, an overtime contest was done. Each team was to do a lion dance on a stake bigger and wider than the normal stakes, after which the winner will be decided by the judges. Team Limitless, the contending team, went first. They are a top-notch lion dance team in Guangzhou. They started the dance and got to the finish line giving a flawless performance. Jiyeon had an injury in his leg and Sifu asked him to forfeit. Chad volunteered to take his place, but the rules did not allow it. Jiyeon convinced Sifu that he could continue in the competition. The Yoon and Cat danced while Doggy beat the drum. They got through their first hurdle and continued with the dance until they met their second hurdle. The boys kept dancing and they go over the second hurdle as well. The crowd cheered them on. A part of their lion head falls off, but they do not mind and kept dancing instead as they danced. Memories of how they started lion dancing and all the practices flashed through. The boys became motivated and then jumped onto the last hurdle. Cat slips through, but Gaeon holds onto him. They swiftly got back into the dancing and made it to the last hurdle. The last thing to do was to just onto the finish line, but Jiyeon was looking in the direction of the sky. Instead, everyone was surprised to know he wanted to jump onto the sky's pillar, a pillar that is considered impossible to jump on for lion dancers. Jiyeon asked Cat to help him by giving him a push, as only one lion dancer can jump onto the sky pillar. The weather became cloudy and a heavy breeze took away the iron holding the sky pillar. Doggy stopped drumming and jumped into the water. Together with Chad's team, they attached the iron back. The Yoon heard drums again, and when he looked, he realized Ji-yoon was the one drumming. The drummers of the other team too joined in beating their drums, while the crowd encouraged Yoon by cheering him on. Ji-yoon remembered his childhood memories of the first time he ever went to a lion dance festival with his parents. His father, who was laying in a coma, miraculously moved his fingers with Cat's help. Ji-yoon looked around, and the cheer he got from everyone encouraged him and gave him more confidence. He jumped, and as he did, everyone gathered, and those who were watching the competition on the television watched in anxiety, afraid he might not make it. The lion and Gaeon was finally released, and he reached the top of the sky pillar, achieving the impossible, but unfortunately he fell from the pillar. Here, it's ends of the movie.